I would consider myself a movie guy. Nothing quite hits like going to my local theater and seeing the new releases. I see a lot of movies, and I've been noticing a few names that have been popping up more consistently. One actor in particular has been clawing his way up the box office earnings list and the A list to where he had two major summer blockbusters in 2026. I'm talking about Tom Holland. This got me wanting to take a look back through his career and see his evolution over time into how he became a big name today. To do this, I watched all 24 movies that Holland received an acting credit in. This means I am not including any movies where he only appears in as a cameo, a stand-in role, or a post-credit scene that uses a picture of him. To chart his acting evolution, I had a stopwatch by my side to track how much screen time Holland got in each film, and when we started to see him take on more prominent roles.
There's these little people that run around the house borrowing stuff.
Tom Holland's first theatrical role was as Sho in the UK dub version for Arrietty. It's a movie adaptation based on Mary Norton's novel, The Borrowers. The story is well written, characters are fully fleshed out, the animation is beautiful, and the entire experience is overall very enjoyable. This was the first time I ever watched Arrietty. It's a very imaginative movie that brought me back to a childlike wonder. I myself grew up with not many children around to play with, so I felt an understanding of how lonely Sho and Arrietty are in their environments. And although their paths split at the end, I was left with a sense of optimism that even though they will most likely never see each other again, it's the friendship they had that was so special, even if it was for just a small amount of time. I would classify Tom Holland as a co-lead of the film since he's featured in nearly half the runtime, with Sho's story closely intertwining with Arrietty's. I wouldn't have guessed that this was his first time doing a voiceover role as he seemed natural at it, and it was fun listening to a teenage Holland in interviews getting into his character's motivations, showing he took the role very seriously. I really enjoyed Arrietty, and I gave the movie a 4 out of 5 stars.
You're looking for your family?
The Impossible is based on a true story of a family on vacation being caught up and split apart by the 2004 Indian Ocean tsunami. This was my first time watching this movie, and knowing it's his first on-screen performance, I was blown away by Tom Holland's performance. It's pretty clear to see he was meant to be an actor. Even though he's only 14 years old, he holds his own alongside both Naomi Watts and Ewan McGregor. When the family gets separated, the film bounces back and forth between Watts Holland and McGregor with the other two child actors. In the Watts Holland storyline, there's a point where Watts' character is dealing with a life-threatening injury. She is bedridden for nearly the entire film, leaning heavily on Holland as the focal point in the hospital and being the emotional beacon. The Impossible is a $45 million budget movie. Like, a lot is riding on every decision and performance. This could have been a lot for a young Tom Holland to shoulder, but he did a fantastic job. And I thought the scenes between him and Naomi Watts were when the movie was at its best. This film was intense, the production design was well done, and the acting was great. I do think though that the movie can be somewhat exhausting to the point where I don't know how many times I would be looking to rewatch it. I'd highly recommend anyone who hasn't seen it go check out The Impossible. I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars.
Hi. No one calls me Elizabeth.
Who is that?
Edmund. He's the oldest.
That's how I live now.
We have another family being torn apart. Not by a tsunami, but by a military operation happening in the English countryside. Daisy, played by Saoirse Ronan, tries to reunite with her family despite the chaos. This is a unique independent movie that has this semi-dystopian feel to it. I had an initial weird feeling about it when the movie had romantic tones between Daisy and her cousin Eddie, played by George McKay. Yeah, you heard me right. There's some romance with cousins in it. They truly play the first half of this movie like some sort of Hallmark rom-com where the two leads just so happen to find themselves in a country and eventually finding feelings for one another. But then it takes a sharp turn when the military intervention happens, and the girls are sent to live on a farm with a strange family, while Eddie and his brother Isaac, played by Tom Holland, are sent off to do military things. And for a while in this film, it's just Daisy and Piper, Daisy's youngest cousin, just on this farm until they eventually run away. They do find the two boys, and then learn a new routine together, although life will never go back to being the same as it was before. I personally love the decision to just drop us in the middle of everyone's life at this particular time. There were no long exposition dumps, flashbacks, or unnecessary dialogue. But even in saying that, I feel the movie doesn't explain enough of what was really going on. Like, it's based off of a Meg Rosoff novel of the same name. I'm sure the book allows for enough time and pacing to touch on everything going on, while the screenplay writers felt the need to streamline plot points, and although I find that necessary in every adaptation, sometimes editing out too much can make things even more confusing at times. This movie hits a low and gets bogged down during the moments when Daisy and Piper are just living with the strangers. It's not until they run away that it starts picking back up. I just feel there could have been a better way of pacing this film instead of these peaks and valleys throughout the 100-minute runtime. And even in saying that it felt bogged down, the ending felt super rushed. This movie did little for me in terms of being entertaining. The actors in this did the best they could with what they were given, and the cinematography was pretty good. So taking all of that into account, I gave this a 3 out of 5 stars.
What happened?
I'll fix it.
Ivan Locke has a 90-minute drive home. On his drive, he has to make many phone calls. Initially, when I saw the cast list, I was like, whoa, Tom Hardy, Olivia Colman, Tom Holland? I was excited to watch this. But as soon as Tom Hardy entered the car to say his travel time would be the same as the runtime of the film, I knew what I was in for. This movie reminded me so much of that Ryan Reynolds movie Buried, where it's a singular location with one actor on the phone the entire time. I'm not gonna mince words, this movie was pretty boring. To go down the full plotline for Ivan, a woman he had an affair with is in labor where he is the biological father. He told his wife, so she's angry. A building he's helping construct is having problems with permits, all while he's missing a very important football match with his sons. Now, if you can invest yourself in the story and Ivan as a character, you'll enjoy the film. Unfortunately, I just couldn't wrap my head around why I would care about this man or how his world is crumbling around him. I struggled to connect with Ivan Locke as I felt he wasn't made very sympathetic for all of his faults. I understand wanting to try something different, swinging for the fences, making a lower budget film with it taking place solely in the car over phone calls, but after a while it just felt like everything was getting repetitive. Holland plays Tom Hardy's son, giving him updates on the big game and asking when will Papa be home. He's in the movie for about 4.5 minutes, so to me it's not worth checking out if you're only watching Locke for Tom Holland, who only lent his voice for the role. Locke was the first dud of the Tom Holland watch, as I gave it a 2 out of 5 stars.
What is it?
His respect to see his dark secrets.
Call me Holland. In the Heart of the Sea is based on a book of the same name about a whale ship that was sunk by a sperm whale. This movie is framed with the story being told by Thomas relaying the account to Herman Melville, giving him inspiration to write Moby Dick. It was interesting to see Tom Holland and Chris Hemsworth in a movie together prior to the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I had pretty high expectations seeing both of them on the cast list. This film also stars Cillian Murphy and was directed by Ron Howard. But despite all of those positives, I was pretty lukewarm on this movie. There was a point I felt it was supposed to feel grand in scale, but really it was just very subdued. The CGI was pretty awful in parts, to the point where it took me out of the movie. And instead of enjoying the setting and acting, I was more concerned with how much longer the movie had until the credits ran. Really, it was just more boring than anything else. And it's sad because it had so much potential, yet couldn't elevate itself or get out of its own way to be better than it was. Tom Holland did well in his limited role as the younger Thomas. He's only in the movie for about 25 minutes or so, which is frustrating as this movie is over 2 hours long. I gave In the Heart of the Sea a 2.5 out of 5 stars, and even though this is a slightly better score than Locke, I found myself feeling more underwhelmed in comparison.
Captain, you seem a little defensive.
We fight.
Under ruse!
Peter Parker has entered the building. Spider-Man makes such an early appearance in Tom Holland's filmography, and you know what? I'm not complaining about it. Civil War is basically Captain America versus Tony Stark and the government. This movie to me feels less like a Captain America movie and more so Avengers light. This may not sound too much of a critique, but to me it is. Civil War's purpose originally seems to have served to make a ton of money, show conflict within the Avengers ahead of Infinity War, along with introducing Black Panther and Spider-Man for their upcoming MCU films. And it did all of this and more. Speaking of Spider-Man, Tom Holland makes his Marvel debut in mainly two different sequences. One when Tony Stark comes to New York to recruit him for his side of what would be the battle on the tarmac, which is the other scene of the movie Tom Holland really gets to shine. There does seem to be this notable shift when Holland is on screen. It's like a breath of fresh air, being a new face and a new energy to the universe. Unfortunately, he's only in the movie for about 15.5 minutes, but that's actually pretty decent when you think about how much this movie had to cover, along with how many other characters were also featured. I like the premise of heroes taking accountability of the destruction they cause, even if they save the world. But Captain America Civil War gets bogged down in the semantics and legal jargon, which can slow down an already long movie. Some of the major highlights of this film, in my opinion, are the fight on the tarmac, the twist of Bucky being the person who disposed of Tony's parents, and the final fight between Captain and Tony. Where this comes down for me is I don't feel this has a great rewatchability factor. It's a well-made film, has much to say within the Marvel universe, but mostly feels like a movie setting up future events rather than an exceptional standalone story. I gave Captain America Civil War a 3.5 out of 5 stars.
You drive. No! I don't think they'd let us hang out anymore. We're trying to keep you safe, okay?
Edge of Winter is quite the tone shift for Holland, jumping from Spider-Man to a kid trying to escape being kidnapped by his biological father, played by Joel Kinnaman. This is an independent movie and the directional debut of Rob Connolly. It seems to be his debut and his final film as a director, at least at the time of recording this video. There's points where it's evident that this is a lower budget film done by a relatively new director, but overall I think it's solid. The cinematography is great, the acting between Holland and Kinnaman is effective, and the overall story is interesting. I do feel the pacing was off and the plot was thin in that it could barely keep the tension across the full 90-minute runtime. If you are looking for more Tom Holland, you came to the right movie because this has 69 minutes of Holland just for you. I mean, he's in this movie for 80% of it, which is more than any other movie up to this point. Would I recommend this film? Sure, especially since I watched it for free on Tubi, but there would be other Holland movies I'd say are better from a quality and story standpoint, even if he's in it for less screen time. Due to the acting and the short runtime mainly, I gave Edge of Winter a 3 out of 5 stars.
There is no turning back!
The Lost City of Zed is so frustrating. It's like In the Heart of the Sea 2.0 with having everything to make it a good movie, but really it's a slog to get through. Charlie Hunnam and Robert Pattinson play British military officials sent to the Amazon rainforest to assist in calming down tensions in the region to help get the rubber trade back up and running. During their time there, they come across what they think is a legendary city that Hunnam's character Fawcett would deem the Lost City of Zed. The rest of the film is Fawcett looking for sponsors from either the British government or rich men to send him back to search for the city. Eventually, he's able to go back with his son Jack, played by Tom Holland. Unfortunately, they never return home. This journey and the notoriety of being the one to put this never-mapped city on the map is what ultimately sacrificed his son who went with him, sacrificed seeing his daughter grow up, and sacrificed time being with his wife. It's a cautionary tale of what are your priorities and how far are you willing to go for your life's work. The cast for this movie is stellar with Charlie Hunnam, Robert Pattinson, Sienna Miller, and Tom Holland. All very accomplished actors that can hold a scene. I will say, out of everyone I named, I think Charlie Hunnam is the weakest part of this film. I feel Robert Pattinson would have been a better fit for Percy, as I believed he's a better actor overall. The problem with this movie is that it's majorly bloated with a near 2.5 hour runtime. Nothing much happens for a good portion of this film, and I felt there could have been sections cut down significantly where the movie wouldn't have lost much of the plot. Tom Holland is in this sparsely, and only more prominently towards the ending. The Lost City of Zed is fine, but I wouldn't rewatch it anytime soon, or if at all again. I gave it a 2.5 out of 5 stars.
You will see the safe delivery of our holiest relic to Rome.
This might be a hot take, but the Tom Holland watch was back in a major way when I got to Pilgrimage. It's got Tom Holland, Jon Bernthal, monks, sacred relics, and religious violence. I mean, what more do I need to say? This was a bit of a slow burn in the beginning, but as it progressed, I slowly started buying in more and more. I love the tension and suspense in this movie, elements I wasn't expecting to feel coming into Pilgrimage. The movie becomes satisfying as the men, more so Tom Holland's The Novice, realize that people are dying over a rock that some priests say was needed to help win a war. The theme of blindly following any faith that would put traditions over actual lives is such an effective message. Bernthal and Holland really carry this movie, and I think the cinematography is spectacular. The supporting cast didn't do much to add to the film. I would even say that some of the performances were so over the top, it took me out of it at times. I think the Gaelic warriors, who are the antagonists to the caravan, are very one-dimensional. The ending of the film haunted me for a full day after watching this movie. I wasn't expecting to like this as much as I did. Maybe because I watched it after The Lost City of Zed, I found it more appealing. But this was another 96-minute movie that had some decent action, unique messaging, good aesthetics, and was just an overall fun time. And in the end, I gave Pilgrimage a 3.5 out of 5 stars.
Too late. You guys are losers.
You're the Spider-Man.
The official MCU Spider-Man series kicked off with Homecoming, roughly a year after Holland was in Captain America: Civil War. This was a highly anticipated film for Marvel and an important one as the franchise creeped closer to Infinity War and Endgame. This film set up Tom Holland's Peter Parker along with evolving Tony Stark as a mentor. Tony Stark's character arc had changed drastically throughout the years, but his relationship with Parker would become the emotional crux in later Avengers movies, and that foundation was laid effectively here in Homecoming. Tony felt more like a parental figure towing the line of encouragement but also trying to show tough love when teaching a lesson. Like when Stark took back his technology from Peter when he endangered everyone on the ferry. Peter had to learn the suit doesn't make the hero, it's the person inside it that does. Tom Holland's Spider-Man has become a fan favorite as many would be able to resonate with him trying to have a quote work-life balance, understand life, and I truly think he's one of the most down-to-earth superheroes that the MCU has. The decision to not show us a traditional origin story makes this Spider-Man feel more unique compared to the other two live-action iterations. It's a welcome change to not have to see Uncle Ben perish again. Michael Keaton as Vulture was a very inspired choice. He was in this sort of renaissance after Birdman, and he threw himself into this villainous role, showing an understanding of the character motivations, what the movie needed, and a great mix of emotions. The one moment that always gives me goosebumps is them driving to prom. The tension in that scene between Holland and Keaton is palpable. I quite enjoyed this movie, but it's not my favorite Tom Holland Spider-Man film. I find it quite charming, but slightly off in tone and takes a bit to get into the story. Even in saying that, I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars, and it was a promising start into a character that will make up around a third of Holland's filmography.
Trust you brought your checkbooks.
There's always more to see.
After Homecoming, Tom Holland was in The Current War, a historical drama. This movie is about the battle between Edison, Westinghouse, and Tesla over whose method for electricity would be used to power the United States. This movie boasts a well-revered cast starring Benedict Cumberbatch, Michael Shannon, Nicholas Hoult, and Tom Holland, just to name a few. The Current War went through a bit of production hell with reshoots and having to change distribution companies. The movie was shown at the Toronto International Film Festival in 2017, but underwent major changes that delayed it a full 2 years before it being wide released in theaters. The movie feels very one-note and the performances feel toned down. Like the scenes that should be really notable are the ones where Shannon and Cumberbatch are on screen together, yet I felt nothing. I came into the movie wanting to like it more than I did, as I find this time in US history somewhat fascinating, but it couldn't get to that next level. The ending was completely anticlimactic. The emotional moments, like Edison mourning his wife, just didn't move me as we didn't spend much time with them as a couple. This movie had this very sterile feel to it, as if it was wanting to come across as more of a documentary rather than an entertaining movie with remarkable performances. Tom Holland plays Edison's secretary Samuel Insull. His major contribution to the film is giving Cumberbatch's Edison some minor advice here and there, then stepping in for him during a major proposal to help GE become the electrical company of America. The best way to describe this movie is fine. It's certainly a movie and serviceable. It just lacks the entertainment factor that would make me happy to rewatch this in the future. I gave the current war a 2 out of 5 stars.
Should have gone for the head.
I don't feel so good.
I am inevitable. I am Iron Man.
I like movies to the point I have some core memories from certain theatrical experiences, and I don't think many stand up to how I remember feeling in both Infinity War and Endgame. It was the culmination of years of lead up, build up, and hype all rolled out in a year's time. It was incredible to be in a packed theater of fans watching it unfold. Watching back now, it feels more like fan service in places and overbloated to make sure every character they ever introduced had 2 minutes of screen time. I'd say Endgame feels more like a complete movie given it has an ending, while Infinity War does its job of setting everything up, but at times feels directionless. It's quite extraordinary what Marvel was able to do over 11 years, but I feel like I could find a better way to spend 5.5 hours of my life than rewatch these movies. The best parts I would say were when Spider-Man was on screen, which unfortunately was very minimal. I'll admit, I got teary-eyed at the end of both movies when Peter got blipped, and then when Stark had his final confrontation with Thanos. A moment I now find less impactful with Robert Downey Jr. coming back to Marvel. This proved to me how important Spider-Man is to the MCU, as he was set to take the torch and be a level of consistency in a journey that would be anything but moving forward in the collection. I gave Infinity War 2.5 out of 5 stars, while I gave Endgame 4 out of 5 stars.
You don't want any part of this.
I want to start things off by stating that this is my favorite live-action Spider-Man film of all time. Far From Home does a fantastic job of balancing both Peter and Spider-Man. He's on a school trip looking forward to doing teenager stuff, like buying a gift for his crush, but knowing he has the responsibility to still be a hero even outside his normal stomping grounds. This is also where Peter has to learn to take that next step within himself. He saw his mentor make the ultimate sacrifice for humanity, but there's a part of Peter that he still wants to be selfish and to still be a kid. It's actually quite fascinating that he knew Stark more so after he went through his growing pains, rather than when we initially saw Stark when he was a billionaire showboat. I don't think Stark in the original Iron Man would consider sacrificing himself for the world at large, but he did in Endgame, and that made Peter self-conscious about not being responsible enough to be the quote next Iron Man. I thought the writing was beautiful in portraying that part of Peter's journey along with him realizing it later in the movie. I love MJ and Ned being more full characters in this movie, adding a dynamic to the story and the tapestry that is Peter's path. Mysterio is one of my favorite all-time Spider-Man villains, and his powers of projection worked for me. I did feel Jake Gyllenhaal's performance was over the top in some scenes, but it worked in the context of the movie. The one scene that will always stand out is the illusion fight with Mysterio. The imagery and creative direction is superb, and it makes for a great reversal in the end fight when Spider-Man is able to trust himself to overcome everything around him to defeat Mysterio. This movie is one of the best the MCU has to offer, and for everything I said, I gave it a 5 out of 5 stars.
Subject appears disoriented.
When a secret agent is turned into a pigeon, the only person he can trust is a young scientist from his agency to track down the cure while also trying to save the world. I want to start off by talking about what I liked about this film. The name Spies in Disguise is such a creative name. It's true, they are in disguise, but also in the skies. That's some great double meaning, but unfortunately, that's really where my accolades for this film end. I find this movie very unremarkable and honestly quite forgettable. This felt like a half-baked children's movie sporting a decent cast, but just not doing enough to move the needle. The concept of this movie could have been somewhat unique, but I wonder if this was done in response to Despicable Me in some way. Granted, spies have been a fixture in children's media since like the beginning of time. One major problem I had was the animation style. I didn't find it aesthetically pleasing to watch. I mean, I like that they had a specific style, it's just this style wasn't up to my personal taste. This hurts my personal rating for it since I wasn't vibing with it or would care to watch it again anytime soon. It wasn't good, it wasn't terrible. Spies in Disguise is a middling film on Disney Plus that gets lost in the sea of better content surrounding it. I gave Spies in Disguise a 2.5 out of 5 stars.
We have no choice but to embark on this perilous journey.
I want to preface this review saying that Dolittle isn't the worst film in Tom Holland's filmography. I am sure that can't be said for most of the other actors who appear in this. I just wanted to get that out of the way because I'm about to be very negative of Dolittle, but rest assured, the worst is yet to come. Out of all of the Tom Holland movies I hadn't seen prior to this project, Dolittle was the one with the biggest reputation, but I wanted to come in with an open mind. However, the movie was worse than I had imagined. The first thing I noticed was how Robert Downey Jr. had to dub over himself for the entire film. He tried to do a Welsh accent, which he described as the single hardest accent on earth. Once the film received negative reviews, it underwent major reshoots where it was tough for Downey Jr. to redo the accent consistently with the parts they were planning to keep. So he redid all of his lines in a vocal booth. The visual effects are another huge blunder, and that's a major problem when 90% of your movie is visual effects. All the animals don't look realistic at all, the plot feels directionless, the story is poorly written, and the emotional beats fall flat. To top it all off, the ending of the movie feels nonsensical with Dolittle pulling a bagpipe out of a dragon's hot hole. And you know, I hate to be too critical of Dolittle because it seemed like a passion project for Robert Downey Jr., who really swung for the fences with his acting decisions and his production company helped make this movie. It was one of the first movies he did post-Endgame, post-Tony Stark, and it flopped so hard. Not even Tom Holland could rescue this movie as he's only featured for about 3 minutes as Dolittle's dog. Every other animal joins Dolittle on this seaward journey while the dog stays back in Buckingham Palace to look after the ailing Queen Victoria. I did not like this movie, and I gave it a 1 out of 5 stars.
Come, dear brother, our destiny awaits.
Okay, I'm coming.
From one of the worst movies to one of my favorites, I feel Onward doesn't get enough credit with how good of a movie it is. It has adventure, magic, heart, and funny jokes. I like the setting of a fantasy land forgetting its magic. A great parallel to when real life gets redundant and we forget to see the magic in every day. The brother dynamic between Ian and Barley is very charming. I'm not the biggest Chris Pratt fan, but at least his voice fits here more than it does say Mario or Garfield. Unlike Spies in Disguise, I love the animation of Onward. I'm happy it doesn't look like the modern default Pixar character design like in Luca. I feel the animators were able to have some creative liberties with all the mythical beasts and different character designs. This movie tugs at my heartstrings as I am someone who lost their father at a young age. So the ending destroys me with Ian giving up his chance of meeting his father so that Barley could talk with their dad one last time. I think some of the side quests were kind of ridiculous, like the car chase with a motorcycle gang of sprites. I found that scene to go on a bit too long. I think something that hindered Onward upon its release was its timing, as well as it being in a catalog of Pixar classics, making it be lower on some ranking list than I would like it to be. I'm happy it got nominated for Best Animated Feature for the Golden Globes and the Academy Award, so at least it got some nods there. In my opinion, this is the best non-Marvel Tom Holland movie, where I gave Onward a 4.5 out of 5 stars.
Figure it's time to pass it on.
Because I want to.
The Devil All the Time is a dreary look into small-town corruption in the 1940s and the decades following. The story has 3 separate plot lines that ultimately converge at the end, where violence seems to be the only resolution. The cast list for Devil All the Time is fantastic, and it baffled me why I hadn't heard much about this movie given the star power attached to it. This movie shares similarities with Holland's Pilgrimage in that it criticizes religion when used for nefarious and evil ways. Tom Holland's character, Arvin Russell, was traumatized as a kid through his father's zealousness. Reverend Preston T. Garden uses his status as a church official to manipulate and take advantage of his congregation. And Carl Henderson tells people hitchhiking about him being a former Sunday school teacher to make them feel comfortable to get into his car. But instead of helping the people he picks up, Carl and his wife drive them to a secluded place to either blackmail them or dispose of them altogether. There are times I wonder if this movie would have been better as a miniseries with everything they try to fit in the nearly 2.5-hour runtime. Also, if this was a miniseries, we could have gotten more screen time for each talented star rather than having like an Avengers style cameo every now and then when they pop in and out of the story. The tough part about The Devil All the Time is the dark subject matters through the entire film. I mean, it's pretty non-stop from when the movie starts until it ends. It's relentless, and I was getting exhausted the more I watched. I would get into more details of what all the characters go through, but I don't want to break any of the YouTube's community guidelines. If you decide to watch this, I suggest having a comedy video or something on standby to pick up your spirits once the credits start to roll. A positive I would give The Devil All the Time is the ending being satisfying. Tom Holland's Arvin is put through the ringer dealing with death at every corner. So him taking care of everyone who is corrupt really released the tension that was building up through the duration of the movie. I can't say I enjoyed my time watching The Devil All the Time, and I don't know when I'll want to rewatch this movie, if ever again. I gave it a 2 out of 5 stars.
Sometimes I feel like I've already seen everything that's gonna happen.
Tom Holland teamed up with the Russo brothers to star in their passion project Cherry. In an interview with Arrietty, they mentioned they purchased the rights but had no plans of making the film until they saw Holland. They asked him on the set of Endgame if he'd be interested, and Holland signed on. Cherry is based off the book of the same name. Nico Walker wrote it while in federal prison, basing some scenes off his real-life events, but also exaggerating and fictionalizing other events. Cherry joined the army on a whim when his girlfriend Emily said she was moving to Canada. She ended up not leaving, but Cherry did. After his deployments, Cherry had troubles reintegrating into society because of his PTSD. He and his now wife spiral as he resorts to robbing banks to pay back debts and help fund their prescription addiction. In my opinion, this is the best acting performance of Tom Holland's career. He plays such a different character than he has in any of his other performances, and he nails it. In many interviews, he's talked about how this was one of the toughest performances he's ever done. He had to do body transformations for different points of the movie. He felt extreme pressure to do the role justice since he was emulating Nico Walker to a certain extent, and just the level of intensity that this role needed throughout this entire film. Tom Holland really rose to the occasion and proved he can do so much more than just be Peter Parker. There was a point during the film where I said that I wanted him to do more independent roles and be in more independent movies to show off his acting range. I also like the care and attention put into this passion project from the Russo brothers. I could tell they had reverence for the source material, and I like some of the creativity choices they used camera-wise that maybe they can't do in a Marvel movie. I hate to sound repetitive, but Cherry does suffer from many of the same criticisms I had for The Devil All the Time. It's nearly 2.5 hours long and split into 7 chapters. Each chapter is a different point of Cherry's life and struggles in that time period. I almost wonder what the Apple TV miniseries would look like for this film and how much smoother it would feel. The dark subject matters in Cherry also make this tough to watch and rewatch. Things are awkward in the beginning as the movie starts off with a young and toxic relationship between Cherry and Emily, then jump to his army years and the struggles of being back home. Chapter 5 of the film, titled Dope Life, has the best acting, but is the toughest to watch due to what the characters go through during that part of Cherry's life. I did think that this was much more remarkable, memorable, and overall a better movie than Devil All the Time, even with some of their similarities and vibes. I gave Cherry a solid 3 out of 5 stars.
Stop! Don't come any closer! It's a girl.
Girl.
You man, fight. Be quiet.
I'm trying.
We have officially reached the worst movie in the Tom Holland filmography. Chaos Walking is based on the young adult novel of the same name. It centers around Todd Hewitt, played by Tom Holland, and him growing up in the future where his tiny community of all men have the unique skill of having their thoughts out loud all the time thanks to aliens. Todd discovers a woman near his village and the two run off looking for another town that would be more welcoming of Viola, played by Daisy Ridley. Chaos Walking is a mess in both what was captured on film and the production that happened behind the camera. Lionsgate bought the rights to the Chaos Walking trilogy in 2011, and they tried to get the project off the ground, but there were barriers at every turn. It took over 6 years to get this movie filmed, then 2 years to do reshoots, mainly because of the busy schedules of Holland and Ridley. This movie sank in the box office when it was released in 2021. It was critically panned, and there was really no chance for it to ever break even from its $125 million budget. All the troubles experienced while trying to make the film are evident in the final product. I'm sure the premise of all the men's thoughts being audible for everyone to hear plays better in the book, but the execution in the movie is so clunky. The villains of Mayor Prentice, portrayed by Mads Mikkelsen, and David Oyelowo's Aaron are both one-dimensional and underutilized. Especially Aaron, who barely does anything in the movie, but then does something I will not elaborate on involving Todd's dog. I'm sure that this was an emotional turn in the book, but in the movie, it felt unjustified and completely unnecessary. Most of this movie is rather boring, with Todd and Viola just walking slowly through the forest with no action happening until 20 minutes left in the movie. I understand that this was supposed to be the first movie in a trilogy, but I don't think that there was enough content to fill the 109-minute runtime. Not even all of their conversations felt like it developed their characters very much or helped me care about them in general. Not even the ending, with Todd gaining more control of his powers to help take down the evil mayor, felt all that satisfying. I will say my favorite part of this movie is the cliffhanger ending to the next movie that is never coming. Chaos Walking is awful, and not even a fun bad type of way. It's borderline unwatchable, and I hate that this is one of the movies I bought instead of renting. It's right there. I gave Chaos Walking a 0.5 out of 5 stars.
Hello, Peter.
The third movie in Holland's Spider-Man trilogy took an ambitious turn by trying to establish the multiverse by crossing over with Maguire and Garfield's renditions. Truly, this could have been a disaster by phoning it in by just hitting all the nostalgia buttons, and trust me, it hits many of those during its 150-minute runtime. But this movie makes an effort to say so much more. Peter Parker is dealing with the fallout of everyone knowing that he is Spider-Man and seeing the consequences that can come to the ones he cares about, learning that lesson especially hard with Aunt May's death at the hands of Willem Dafoe's Green Goblin. It was great to see Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield come back to the Spider-Man franchise to team up and actually help their villains get a satisfying ending. The scene that always gets me emotional is Garfield's Spider-Man saving MJ the way he couldn't with Gwen in The Amazing Spider-Man 2. The whole movie feels like a Shakespearean tragedy, with Holland's Peter Parker making the biggest sacrifice to make everyone forget about him. He feels like it will be in the best interest for MJ and Ned, and we hear right before the spell is implemented that Peter Parker believes he can just go back to being friends with them so easily once everything is fixed. But he thinks twice seeing them be happy getting into MIT. There's just something that hits differently with the Spider-Man films compared to the other Marvel cinematic movies. There's a sense of heart and never feels like they just made a Spider-Man just to fill a quota in the timeline. I love that they built on Ned and MJ leading to the end being much more impactful. I grew up watching the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man on a constant loop. I can quote parts of that movie to this day. And even though I didn't have as much time with the Amazing Spider-Man duology, I enjoyed them and think Garfield's Parker had my favorite personality of them all. This movie, to me, has everything with a great cast, great story, impactful emotional beats, along with humor and nostalgia. This is like a live action Into the Spider-Verse, and with that comparison, how can I give it less than 5 out of 5 stars?
You were just gonna leave me back there.
Somebody had to get the cross.
Tom Holland went from Spider-Man to Nathan Drake in the highly anticipated action-adventure movie, Uncharted. I have to say off the top that I am not very familiar with the Uncharted games. So I came into this without any preconceived notions. I was looking at this from a purely movie standpoint. I will say I get the online discourse that Holland was a miscast and many believed either Fillion or Wahlberg, who is in this movie just in a different role, should have gotten the part of Nathan Drake. I actually think that Tom Holland plays this role well, it's just that he wasn't given the proper material to be fully believable. The script feels like a tug of war between an Indiana Jones movie with a buddy road trip vibe while also trying to stay true to the video game source material. What it makes is a muddled mess of a story. The pacing is completely off, with the training montage feeling too short. The villains of Santiago Moncado and Joe Braddock are completely underdeveloped. They introduced Chloe Fraser just for her to be ditched at the end. The decisions made felt more like a checklist rather than to make a well-written movie. The cool set pieces like the car and palace attached to the plane are of course from the video game, which I feel translate well to film. I just found this movie overall a bit uninspired, especially since the video game is like a playable movie with more time to develop the story and all the characters properly compared to a 2-hour movie. I gave Uncharted a middling 2.5 out of 5 stars.
My dad is coming home.
I think his king is coming back.
Then I defy the gods.
Tom Holland found himself in another major movie event, this time outside of Marvel, with his performance in The Odyssey. A smaller but pivotal role playing Telemachus, the son of Odysseus. This most recent Nolan film is based on Homer's Odyssey, starring an incredible cast of Damon, Hathaway, Pattinson, Zendaya, Nyong'o, Patel, and many more. I must admit, I was not familiar with Homer's epic when going into the film, so my perspective is how I felt about this from purely a movie standpoint. The Odyssey had a lot to live up to since the announcement a few years back. There were tons of hype, anticipation, critiques, even before anything had been filmed. I myself came in with big expectations and wanting a spectacle, and a spectacle is what I got. The acting of this movie was incredible, but I wouldn't think anything less with one of the best ensemble casts ever assembled. I will say that there were times seeing the famous faces took me out of immersing myself into the story. One example was when I realized Benny Safdie was Agamemnon. At one point, Odysseus was told to sail to Hades for directions, and it was in his presence that Odysseus was confronted by his dead crew members. The scene is eerie and tense. That is until Benny Safdie starts talking. I couldn't help but question, is that Benny Safdie? Effectively taking me out of the scene. The spectacle aspect comes from the cinematography and set pieces. There were points I was watching in awe, thinking that they used every bit of that $250 million budget to push this movie over the top. I mean, the Trojan War scenes were spectacular when seeing an actual city the crew built being set on fire and torn down. The first 30 minutes or so were a bit slow as we heard smaller stories being told of Odysseus to Holland's character in order to help set up the framing and setting of the movie. But once the story started to pick up, I was locked in. Overall, I enjoyed the film a ton. I came in looking to see and feel the magic of movie making, and I felt I got what I wanted. I gave The Odyssey a 4.5 out of 5 stars.
I'm Spider-Man.
Rebirth.
And here we are at the most recent Holland film as of recording this video. Spider-Man: Brand New Day. Brand New Day takes us through the past 4 years after the spell that made everyone forget Peter was cast. In that time, MJ and Ned left for MIT, graduated and returned to New York. Peter has fought crime, built a lab, and has a direct line to the police department. Also, he's eaten a ton of Little Caesars. I found this movie to be ambitious and very complex with everything it was trying to do and say. Peter Parker goes through the feelings of happiness, but also heartache that his friends seem to be living their best lives not knowing who he is. His body is going through mutations as a self-defense mechanism when he feels overwhelmed, as well as this film tries to introduce John Bernthal and Sadie Sink into the Spider-Man franchise as well as the Marvel Cinematic fold. The movie felt clunky in places, trying to establish all of those things effectively in less than 2.5 hours, but I love that it swung for the fences. And even when I felt the scene wasn't the best, it was followed up by something that made me smile or wowed me. I thought the fight scenes were the best of any Spider-Man film. The choreography and stunt work was amazing, and those scenes were heightened with the camera angles and camera movement. I was a bit worried that some cohesion from the Holland Spider-Man trilogy would have been lost with this being the first film in the series not directed by John Watts, but it was important that it did feel different. We are done with High School Peter. Brand New Day has a darkness to it and deals with more complex, serious themes than compared to the other Marvel franchise films, more specifically the Spider-Man series. Although it was awkward in parts, I love it wasn't cookie cutter. It allowed Holland and company to reshape familiar characters, have scenes to do more acting, and push the boundaries of what a Holland Spider-Man film is and will be in the future. I enjoyed Spider-Man Brand New Day, and I'm looking forward to watching it again soon. I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars.
We get to share this moment together now. It's pretty awesome.
Holland's career took time to develop. He sharpened his skills, talent, and connections, leading him to become a box office superstar, helping him to gross over $10 billion worldwide. It's impressive to see someone like Tom Holland, having worked on a Studio Ghibli film, be a main character in a Pixar movie, have a pivotal role in a Nolan film, and becoming a major role in the biggest cinematic franchise, helping to redefine a classic character for 10 years and counting. He has accomplished so much. It feels like he's just getting started, with him only being 30 years old, and his star power continues to climb. I think one major problem with Holland's legacy at the moment is his selection process and the roles he takes. Spider-Man can cast a pretty big shadow over his filmography, where projects outside of Marvel have not done well either in box office yield or through reviews from critics. Through this project, it was clear to see that Tom Holland has talent and drive to be an actor. He has put in years of work to be better, but we've seen some talented people get sidelined with too many stumbles in a row. At this point, he has the world in the palm of his hands, being able to work on any projects he wants, with Marvel as a sort of a safety net, but we'll see what happens in the future. I've been waiting to open these until I finished filming this whole series. It smells good. Really good. I mean, it's just chocolate and orange on a cookie. It is spongier than a cookie. I thought there was gonna be a little bit of a crunch. Honestly, this is really good.